Hello and welcome to Cartoon Overload, a brand new weekly cartoon retrospective hosted by myself, John Hayes, and a man who learned most of his geography knowledge because Kim Possible took him on a tour of Epcot, Karl Jacobs.
Hello.
And joining us this week we have our very special guest, LSMark.
Hello.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I make it's sort of I'm at a weird part of my channel right now where I'm sort of transitioning from making commentary videos where I talk about other YouTube channels, and I'm trying to get more into talking about cartoons because that's what I really care about, because I don't really give a shit about. Oh, can I curse on this? Sorry.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
totally
you can.
fine.
You're fine.
Yeah, I don't really, I don't really care much about YouTube drama, and I'm really passionate about animation and cartoons, so I want to talk about that a lot more.
Whenever I saw your LSMark did a video on Skatoony specifically, whenever I saw that, I was just blasted with nostalgia, and I was like, oh man, I hope he continues on in the cartoon direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it wasn't for that video, I wouldn't have decided to start talking about cartoons again, because I remember I was reminded of that show's existence, and I noticed that nobody ever talked about it, and I was like, I have to do this before somebody takes the idea.
I gotta ask, how did you get reminded? Because I haven't thought of that show since maybe it existed. You know what I mean?
I think it was really late at night, and I was just scrolling through YouTube, and I just find the intro to it somehow, and I was like, oh my god, I remember all of this. And yeah, I didn't tell anyone for months. I think I started planning it out in December, and the video came out.
Awesome.
And my friends who don't even make cartoon videos were like, what's it gonna be on? I'm like, I'm not telling you. I don't want you to take my idea.
I love it.
That's so
good.
perfect. Yeah, I remember when that came out and Carl sent it to me, and then we deadass talked about Skatoony for an hour that night.
Yes.
We were just because I think we were we gotta at some point figure out how to get Skatoony back in the minds of the people, promote your video, and then just get a lot of people talking about it again. Maybe get a revival. I don't know. We'll see what we can do, but
Yeah. Just for the record, Skatoony's definitely going to be coming up again later in this episode. I already have reasoning for it.
Okay.
Don't worry. It makes
Okay.
sense. But we could go ahead and move on.
all right.
Yeah. I guess I could start by... You want to just go right on in... Oh, wait, I forgot. What are we talking about, LSMark? What did you decide to talk about?
I decided that we would be talking about Phineas and Ferb.
Great show. You came to us and you were like, would you prefer talking about SpongeBob or Phineas and Ferb? And we were like, oh man, Phineas and Ferb. Any day of the week, I just kind of want to... I feel like SpongeBob's great, and I'm sure we're going to have an episode on that at some point in time. But I think Phineas and Ferb is I don't know. I was looking up... Usually whenever I prepare for an episode, I look up other people's opinions on YouTube, for instance, if there's any commentary videos on it. And there was nobody talking about Phineas and Ferb, and it was
Yeah.
one of the most popular shows of its time, which I'll get into in the facts if you want me to just go ahead and segue on into that one.
Yeah, let's go.
I didn't even tell Johnny about these facts because there's some really... I didn't realize how popular it was. But anyway, just going on. The show was created by Dan Povenmire, I'm hoping, and
I think
Jeff
it's
Marsh, who both actually voice acted characters in the show, being Dr. Doofenshmirtz and Major Monogram, respectively. A little, just weird fun facts is Isabel is named after Dan's daughter, is a true one.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Here's the weirdest one. I'm just going to go ahead into it. In 2012, it was decided through polling that Phineas and Ferb were the two most recognizable siblings in animation, beating out Lisa and Bart Simpson.
Wow.
What? Actually?
I swear to God. How wild is that?
Who were they polling?
But that's, I think about it, and that's, it kind of lines up, right? 2012 was kind of was that peak? Well, I could go ahead and...
That would be the
been,
middle
yeah.
of its run. Because it was 2008 to 2015
Yeah.
was when it was premiere and final episode. So that's the
crazy.
middle of its run. It's going strong.
Didn't it
Yeah.
only get
It's
4
Simpsons.
seasons as well? That seems like a very long
Yeah.
time for it to be in in production
that's
for
crazy.
what? I'm bad at mobs.
Let's
When
see.
did it start?
I'm sorry?
2008 was it?
Yeah, it officially
2000.
premiered February 1st, 2008, and then ended June 12th, 2015.
Yeah, so that's 7 years about. for only for
Yeah.
4 seasons. That's kind of it's
That's
weird.
Four
wild.
seasons, and then a couple like specials in movies, but even then they weren't like big event things beyond being promoted a little heavier on the channel and maybe having a special DVD for them.
Oh yeah, I remember these events. I remember there was one where it was like a top 10 music countdown or something like that. And
Oh
then
yeah, they did do that.
they did like some weird live action thing where it was them like really poorly animated interviewing celebrities.
That's.
Yeah, we were talking
Don't
about
worry. Don't worry. That's coming up.
No,
I
let's
really
get into that
wanna-
now, dude. Those are so important. We gotta.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna bring Skatoonie into the mix. That's
Oh, I'm
like.
sorry, I ruined the flow of this. Sorry, keep going with your facts.
No, it's no problem. There's
No,
no
that's
real
totally
flow. We're just
fine.
going.
This is that. What was that called again? Phineas and Ferb. Oh gosh. Phineas.
Name's not important. Point is, for anyone who doesn't know, they would have in commercial breaks this weird talk show kind of that was hosted by Phineas and Ferb.
And
Or
it was.
Ferb was like the sound guy or whatever in the background that they'd every once in a while cut to, but it was real life people being interviewed
Yeah.
by like choppy flash animated versions of Phineas and Ferb in these like 2-3 minute segments that they would just kind of drop in commercial breaks.
Yeah, I think it was called Take Two with Phineas and Ferb, maybe.
Yeah. Take
Yeah,
Two with
that
Phineas
was
and
it.
Ferb.
Yeah, because they had it was all celebrities of the time. So I'm sure if you go through the guest list now, it's like a bit of a trip. But there are some weird ones. There was for sure a Jack Black one. There was for
Yeah,
sure
I was
a
about to
Seth
say
Rogen one.
Jablinski
Yeah.
Games before he was famous, I guess, was on there.
Damn,
Guy
they got a lot- they
Fieri
got
was on there.
Taylor Swift. These are some big guests.
Yeah.
hmm
Larry King. This is wild.
Seth
Larry
Rogen?
King.
Yeah,
How
apparently.
how'd they get Seth Rogen?
I remember the Seth Rogen episode pretty vividly because growing up as a child in Canada, when they were like, "You're from Canada, Canada's cool," I remember kid me being like, "Oh, my favorite cartoon characters also like the country that I'm from. That's pretty cool." But it was like through the guise of Seth Rogen, who as like an 11-year-old, I was like, I don't really know who this guy is. And then as I got into my teenage years, I was like, oh, this is definitely not like the audience that I would have thought they were going for.
Yeah.
Like, what would Seth Rogen have been in that Disney would have been like, yeah, let's market Seth Rogen to the kids?
I don't know.
The one I remember the most is they got a soccer player on. I think it was David Beckham, and they had scenes of Phineas
Oh,
and Ferb
yeah.
like kicking balls about, and it looked so horrible the way they
Yeah.
animated it.
Yeah, and it looked super awkward. And was that the same one with the balancing one where they try to like, he shows that he can like balance a soccer ball on his shoulders or something, and then they're like, oh, let's see how much we can balance, and then they just balance
Yes.
like an elephant or something,
Yeah.
and it
That's
just
it.
keeps getting progressively weirder, but it all like looks nothing like how the show looks at all, and is just so obviously this weird offshoot thing.
But can I be honest? I love it. I
Yeah, it's
really,
it's
genuinely
really
It's
love
not
funny.
a really
like-
cool idea, yeah.
Mhm.
But if you want to, we could swing back into the facts really quick because you were talking about the Phineas and Ferb movie. The movie premiered and gained 7.3 million views in America alone.
Holy jeez.
Apparently,
Fuck,
that
I
broke a
remember
ton
the
of
movie.
records. It didn't specify the records, but just take my word for it, I guess.
Yeah, so was that the Across the Second Dimension then?
I
The
believe
movie?
it was, yeah.
I would assume.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
That was like the
Um,
most hyped up
I'd
shit
also like to
ever.
point out that was the movie. I remember
Yeah.
that one specifically.
Yeah, I remember going to school and just talking to my friends, being like, "Only one more week until the Phineas and Ferb movie,"
Yeah, me too.
and it was it was like a fucking event. And
Yeah, for
it
sure.
was so satisfying whenever I got to watch it. I loved it so much.
I'm assuming
Man.
we're talking about Phineas and Ferb Across the Second Dimension, by the way, if anybody wants to check it out. Dude, I think we're going to get into that pretty soon, but one thing, like, to be noted is that, like, growing up, for me at least, I watched Phineas and Ferb a good little bit, and then for some reason I felt like I was too old to watch it after a point in time
Yeah,
and kind
same.
of, like, strayed away.
Mm.
And I've realized now, going back, that I'm like, God, I wish I just kind of stuck with it, because, like, this show is so good.
Yeah,
Um,
that was like the same for me. I watched a lot of like cartoons growing up, and then I think when I got like around 11, I was like, I'm too old to be watching this kid stuff, and I
Yeah.
5 years later, so I'm like, better get back into watching this kid stuff.
Let me have a YouTube channel about all this kids stuff. I love it.
But that's
Yeah,
kind
I
of
don't think-
kind of the joys of doing YouTube videos about it. I can go back and experience all the stuff that I missed out on during that edgy
100%.
phase of cartoons are
for
for
sure.
kids.
Yeah, I don't know if I hit that as much because I definitely remember a time in my life where I would be like, I would watch, an episode of The Simpsons and then an episode of South Park and then Phineas and Ferb and then King of the Hill and then, like, I just kept with anything that was animated and I never really, like, dropped too much. But it was mostly stuff that I had DVD copies or could get through Netflix because it wasn't watching the shows that I was like, I'd feel too young for this. It was whenever the commercial breaks would come on and there would just be like loud, aggressive commercials for kids' toys that I would be like, I would be embarrassed if someone walked in the room and they're like, whatever you're watching is really pushing Polly Pocket right now. But I wouldn't be embarrassed if they walked in and they were like, oh, you're watching Phineas and Ferb, because that I could verify that as a kid. I'd be like, yeah, I'm fine. But
Fair enough. I want to point out that it was nominated for 5 Kids' Choice Awards for like the mainline American Kids' Choice Awards and didn't win a single one.
what?
And I think that's kind of messed up, right?
I think that's complete robbery.
I'm gonna say it's because the Kids' Choice Awards were Nickelodeon and Phineas and Ferb is a Disney show.
Do we really think that there's that much collusion going on in the Kids' Choice Awards?
Yeah, I think so.
Are we about to crack open a scandal about the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards?
Are you a big Kids' Choice Awards guy, Mark?
Me and my sisters watched it every year.
Yeah.
And I think just one year we decided this is like really unfunny and cringy. Let's just
Yes.
not.
Everybody has that year.
Yeah.
I do remember once they had like a competition for like the best pet in animation, and the winner was Patrick from SpongeBob, and I remember being really pissed at that.
As
No
you should be.
way. Best pet in animation?
Yeah,
Okay, I was
I'm
making
pretty-
sure I didn't hear that.
I hope I'm not misremembering that.
I hope you
believe
aren't,
it.
honestly. I really hope that Patrick just is looking at his desk right now, looking at his Kids' Choice Award blimp that says Best Pet.
Best pet. That's fantastic. Oh man.
I
Yeah,
do
I
want to say... Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
I think at this point in our lives, we're kind of hitting a point where it's coming full circle with the Kids' Choice Awards, for Carl and I at least.
Yeah.
Where there was, you watch it as a kid and you genuinely enjoy it, and then you hit the year where you realize that it's cringy and kind of terrible. And then you're
Yeah.
like, well, I'm never going to watch this again. And now we're kind of hitting that age where we're like, you know what I could really go for right now? It's something cringy and terrible. So
Yeah.
we're like totally down to like really contemplating, like, do we watch the Kids' Choice Awards this year? Maybe. I don't know. Like, we'll see where life leads us.
Yeah, I'd
DJ
be-
Khaled is hosting it.
It seems like a lot of fun to sit and watch with other people, but I would never sit on my own. And
No,
I
yeah.
know. You're not
Be
like
so
taking notes on
empathetic.
it.
Yeah, it's
Pretty
really sad if you're
disappointing.
alone in a room watching the Kids' Choice Awards.
Oh my gosh. I want to point out, because this is a good little segue to leave the facts, that the series itself was thought of by the two creators at a coffee shop and then pitched to 4 different networks in the span of 16 years before getting landed on the
Oh
Disney
shit!
Channel.
Yeah, I remember that. It took them so long to
16
get
years
done.
and 4 different networks. I think that's like Phineas and Ferb is it's such a staple, I feel like. It
Mhm.
feels like a pretty large staple that it's like surprising to me that it and then I thought about it basically and I was like, well, Phineas and Ferb, like, on paper doesn't make sense that it's as good as it is. I feel like this seems to be a theme for a bunch of the shows that we're talking about that end up being like this level of genius, but I think Phineas and Ferb is at like such a weird level strictly because of how good its writing is and like
Mhm.
just how well it's orchestrated, because on paper Phineas and Ferb doesn't make any sense to be as good as it is. It's so
It's like
formulaic.
such a predictable show,
Yeah.
yeah, but just somehow it's really cleverly written. It could have easily just been such like a children, like a very young children's show where it's just like the same shit over and over again, but they managed to make something great with such a simple idea of two boys just building shit in their backyard.
Yeah, and they do such a good job of getting you so used to how every episode works to a point where you're not even bothering about how it is formulaic. And with certain shows, you would definitely get tired that it is the exact same. Like, you could divide every single episode up into sitting in the backyard and then like specific quotes that happen. Like, it's always, I know what we're gonna do today, then where's Perry, then he gets the briefing, and then he usually goes and tries to stop Doofenshmirtz, and it's always a trap, and he always has an innator, and it's always, then they finish it and Candace tries to get them busted, and then like the same exact like 7 beats are hit every single episode.
Yeah, and
But
like,
I
oh,
could
sorry.
sit down and watch all of them. No, you can
Oh
go.
yeah, I knew all of that as a kid. I knew how predictable it was, but I didn't. It's like I knew and I didn't know at the same time. Like, I'd be like, oh, here's the part where he asks where Perry is. Here's the part where Isabella comes in and asks what do they do. And it's like, but you don't care when you're a kid because it's just, I don't know. It's hard to describe how it manages to be predictable, but at the same time entertaining and worth watching till the end. Because you want to see how all this crazy shit goes down. You want to see how like Doofenshmirtz invention backfires and like gets rid of whatever Phineas and Ferb are building. It's fun to sit and watch. And
Yeah, 100%. I agree to that totally. Johnny was looking at the wiki. I think it was the wiki you were talking about.
Yeah.
Where you just read off the synopsis
Yeah.
of they only mention the things that are 100% true in every single episode of Phineas and Ferb. But it's so like it feels like it's a full episode because like if you have like if you could find that you have to like
Yeah,
read it because
if
it's
you keep
so
talking, I will.
okay, sorry. It's so good because it goes through every single thing that happens in each episode and you're like, oh, I recognize that episode, but in reality it's like, no, that's every single episode of Phineas and Ferb.
Okay, yeah, so
It's
here is
wild.
the 8 points that make every single Phineas and Ferb episode. Point 1. Some incident gives Phineas an idea for a project and he announces, hey Ferb, I know what we're going to do today. Point 2. Meanwhile, Perry slips away using one of many hidden tunnels to a secret underground base. Phineas, or occasionally another character, remarks, hey, where's Perry? Point 3. Major Monogram briefs Perry, whom he calls Agent P, on his mission, sometimes amounts to nothing more than, Dr. Doofenshmirtz is up to something, find out what it is, and put a stop to it. Point 4. Candace sees what the boys are doing and resolves to tell her mom to bust them. Point 5. Perry breaks into the skyscraper office of Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated, complete with its own easy listening jingle and variations depending on location and time. Doofenshmirtz traps Perry and explains his current evil plan. Perry escapes the trap and they battle. Phineas and Ferb complete their project. Mom gets home. Candace thinks that at last Mom will see what the boys have been up to and believe her, but just as Mom is about to step in the backyard, all evidence vanishes, usually as a side effect to Doofenshmirtz's device. Doofenshmirtz, foiled again, cries out, curse you, Perry the Platypus. And there's your episode. For 4 seasons, and it's perfect. Like,
But I think I have to like piggyback onto what Mark was saying, where it really is. It's so formulaic that it's good. I think because it really like you know what you're getting into, and you're like, I need to see like how they. You're like, there's the first episode. They're like, there's a middle roller coaster. There's a massive roller coaster in the middle of the entire city. Like, how do you explain that one? And like, no matter what they build, you want to see like how it disappears, for instance. And it's just, yeah, there's something about it that makes it so charming.
were there any specific ways that the Innator would get rid of whatever Phineas and Ferb built that you either always remembered from a kid or were favorite ones that you're like recently thinking about? Because I have one in mind specifically.
Then you go ahead and shoot first.
Okay, which was there's an episode where Candace says, why don't you just be normal kids and like build a lemonade stand or whatever? And they say, yeah, sure, we'll go do that. And then they set up a little wooden lemonade stand out in front of their house. And then Candace sees that and is like, oh, they're not doing anything bad today. I can just go hang out and do whatever. And then it like the shot zooms out and you see that they have a giant robot in their backyard that's squeezing hundreds of lemons a minute. And it's all going to that lemonade stand, which is then turning into a franchise. And before the end of the day, they have like 9 different franchise locations throughout the city and billboards everywhere and blimps set up. And at some point, Doofenshmirtz's nadir is a paper cut machine. So he decides that whatever it's going to do, he's going to load a bunch of paper into this machine, and then he's just going to give people paper cuts so that they're constantly going to have paper cuts and be really annoyed because of the paper cuts. And at some point, the machine malfunctions and fires a paper cut off, and the paper slices the thumb of the robot who's squeezing the lemons, and then he squeezes a bunch of lemon juice into the robot cut, and then the robot just goes, ah, and then blows up. And then that's how they solve it, because then Phineas is just like, well, guess we're out of lemonade, go home everyone, and then they just shut down all the franchises and remove all the blimps and billboards immediately, because they're like, well, we don't have anything to sell anymore, we can't promote it, and they just shut it down.
Do you have like an episode that speaks to you, Mark?
This kind of goes against what I was just saying, but I always liked the episodes where they try and subvert the usual formula, because that makes it all the better. Just I always loved the episodes. Like I watched this episode all the time whenever I was young. The one where Candace does get to show their mum what Phineas and Ferb were building, and then they send them to like some military camp, I think, and she realizes that if her life wasn't so formulaic and she wasn't trying to bust her brothers all the time, if the show wasn't the way it is, then she would just be completely bored out of her mind and have nothing to do. So she has to go and rescue her brothers from the camp and try to get them to start building shit again. And the only thing I have against the episode is that it ends with the it's just a dream sequence thing.
Yeah.
But they make a clever joke out of it again, where it turns out like Candace wakes up, then she goes down to breakfast, and then I think something happens where she acknowledges Perry like being Agent P, and then a bunch of guys come in from the what was their organization called?
AOCA, organization without a cool acronym.
Yeah. They all come in capture the family, because revealed where he is, and then it reveals that it was actually all Perry's dream the whole time. So he was dreaming about Candace, dreaming about this whole episode. And I was like that episode.
Gosh.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that I rewatched, like going back to before this episode that we're recording now, and there's a lot of really good little bits with the formula in that episode. Like, as the dude who runs the military camp is like trying to teach Phineas and Ferb to not be creative and build things, where he's doing like the stereotypical roll call where they're all standing in front of the beds, and then Phineas and Ferb turn their bed into a Ferris wheel so that they can maneuver for whoever's on the top bunk, so they don't have to get up, and they can constantly have someone being able to be on the top bunk. And then it just slowly turns into like his conditioning for it is that he gives them toothbrushes and makes them clean the bathroom, and then they both sit in the bathroom, and then just with the like scratches of the toothbrush and the squirt bottle, they just start making a song out of it. And then he like barges back in the room, he's like, "In no funky rhythms," like shutting down whatever they're doing. Like, it's very much where you're like, oh yeah, this is the part of the episode where they have a song, and then like he comes in and he's like, "Please stop, like you can't do this." But they have
I really like. I'm sorry. I just want to say I really like the episode to like talk about even subtle ways when they go against the cliches that they build into the show. Is the episode I think it was season 1 where they decide to make a one-hit wonder, and there's like a point in time where they're like performing at the concert venue or at the mall, and then Candace is like, "I'm gonna call mom," and then Phineas is like, what do you say to her? I'm not doing anything wrong. You know what I mean? Like, there's kind of like, and you're like, okay, I get calling her for like a roller coaster or like making a beach in the backyard, but you're right. You're kind of, what are you gonna tell her? You know what I mean? And I thought that was like kind of hilarious. He's like, and tell her what?
Yeah.
The show has a lot of great like self-aware moments like that. I know there's a part in the movie that I found really funny where Phineas and Ferb are helping Doofenshmirtz build his like portal machine, and they're asking him he's like, "Oh, I just have to install this self-destruct button," and they were like, "Well, why do you need a self-destruct button?" And he just like thinks to himself for a second. He's like, "No, wait, you're right. I don't need a self-destruct button."
It's so good. I think Johnny, I'm sure, wants to talk about this part, but we were talking about Doofenshmirtz is such a perfect character. He's just so
my
funny.
favorite part of the show He's
Yeah,
good.
definitely.
Like every other line he has is absolute gold. I just love, in general, like the kind of trope of villains that like aren't great at being villains, and sometimes will just kind of like hang out, and that's what they do for the episode.
Yeah.
And he's just so good at that, where it's you get that he like has the intentions of being evil, but also he's definitely like friends with Perry, and he like
Yeah.
feel like there's the one when I can't remember if it's Perry's fighting a different supervillain or a different
Oh, I know what one you're talking
Alka
about.
agent
Yeah,
starts to fight Doofenshmirtz, but then they like get in a fight and like have a breakup because he's like, "Oh, well, you found a new supervillain," or Perry's like, "You found a new agent to start foiling your plans," and then he like feels really bad about it, and it just
yeah, that's a great episode. I think he's fighting some panda, like Petey the panda, or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that. Yeah, that's
That's
great.
a-
And then they play like
Mhm.
the generic song about them being together.
Mhm.
It's really good. I love that episode. And then it ends with like a Dr. Phil thing of both of them on a
Yeah.
talk show.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, yeah. Because then doesn't the panda like be the one to like throw the chair and like freak out on the Dr. Phil
Yeah.
episode or something? Yeah.
Yeah.
What a good show.
That doesn't even. It's so ridiculous.
No, yeah,
I
it
feel
is.
like him and Major Monogram go so hand in hand, like with their, like just the comedy and like the writing that they do. I wonder if that was like intentional because that's like who the creators played. But Major Monogram makes such funny quips similar to that. Like there's a episode in season 2, I think it might be the premiere of season 2, where Perry like goes into a tunnel and then like lands in a log, and then the log is like going down a river, and then it turns into like a park attraction where everybody's like, "Oh, get ready for your mission" and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And then Major Monogram is like, "Hey, I hope you liked your entrance. Like it was either that or like a massive, massive pay." And he's like, "But I did a poll with a bunch of 6-year-olds, and it turns out that they wanted more like fluffy animals telling them they have a mission than just hand them a piece of paper." And I
That's
was like,
fantastic.
why is that
yeah.
like so perfect? It's just so good.
Yeah, there's it's a show of so many good moments
It is.
where it's like that's maybe why I took to it so much as a kid, was because there's so much to remember from it, and there's so much that you're just like it'll get stuck in your head and you'll think about it. Like I have a friend who still will quote the there's a point when Doofenshmirtz is in a spaceship, and whatever he announces that he just built, he says like laser, and then it'll be like laser, 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 cookie, laser, and then he's like, oh, I think my fourth echo is broken, and then, like, where every once in a while we'll be sitting around, someone will say something, and then they'll just mock it, mock it, mock it, cookie, and then say it again, and we'll all lose our minds.
That's so
I
good.
forgot about that. It's really funny. Yeah,
I
for
don't
how-
remember that one.
Yeah, it's complete nonsense. I
you
love
don't-
it.
You don't care about how predictable how formulaic it is because the show just like thrives off character interactions.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's it. 100%. And something else that thrives off of, to piggyback onto the memorable thing, let's talk about how genuinely unapologetically good the music is.
Oh, the
in
music's
Phineas
so
and
fucking
Ferb.
good.
It's like really good.
Like it has no right to be as good as it is.
Yeah. Back when I was like I didn't watch any like cartoons. I found one a song on YouTube and I was like, oh, let's just watch it, how cringy and all this is, and I watched it and then I was like, okay, I'll watch another one. And then it just led to me for the next like 2 hours just listening to all the music from the show. It's all
You're like,
so
all right,
good.
just one more.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with this, is the next, like, I don't even know how long of my life I'm just gonna have these songs stuck in my head. Like, they've been there, but rewatching it reignited so many of them, where I'm like,
100%.
I low-key just kind of want to add Backyard Beach to my phone, because, like, it's a good song. Like, it's just really fun. And I'm like, you know what, I could see, like, sitting around on a summer day out by a pool with a drink, just being like, you know, we're gonna play Backyard Beach, and there'd be like a good amount of people that I know that would be like totally fine with that, and
Yeah. Or they'd be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then they'll turn it on, they're like, oh my god.
yeah,
Or the one-hit wonder that they make, where it's like bow
Yeah.
chicka bow wow.
Yeah.
When I heard that for the first time, I was like blown into another dimension.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god. There's so many years of me that was obsessed with this for some reason. But it's so like it actually like all joking aside, if Phineas and Ferb was like instead of a show just like
A
an
soundtrack.
actual musician, like I think it would do super well, honestly.
You're not even that wrong. If it was just like maybe a couple clips, if it was like a Gorillaz style, like maybe they'd put out like a video where it's like a music video that has 30 seconds of interaction beforehand, and then it's just this like fun band thing. It could be pretty like successful on that alone.
Yeah, I agree. Did you have any? Do you guys have any standout songs specifically?
Oh,
that,
I
like,
can't
you
just
remember
name. I
resonating?
really couldn't just name one. I love the Evil Boys one where it's Candace and she's got the bag over her head and she's got like a really raspy voice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then Candace has really good songs. The Busted one's another like great one.
Yeah, that is good.
And then, oh sorry.
No, going off of the Candace one, Squirrels in My Pants.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was so like popular that they had to make an extended version of it.
Did they really?
I wouldn't be
I think-
surprised,
Oh
honestly.
no, know what it is? The extended version is play because Phineas and Ferb has more animated stuff during the credits. Like they'll have like a continued gag or like have like an epilogue of some sorts play during the credits, and I think the epilogue for that episode was like an extended version of that song, and they did that
Yeah, I
for
just
Busted
found
as
it.
well.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I feel like those might have been just music videos that they would play in like commercial breaks too.
Yeah,
Like,
I
feel like that's
definitely
the
remember
thing
that,
I
yeah.
remember is that they would just play Phineas
I-
and Ferb songs.
I
Yeah.
remember a Squirrel in My Pants specifically was
That's
like
valid.
such a that definitely was in multiple commercials. Watching like thinking back now, that was definitely true. 100%.
Yeah, a lot of very good corny 80s rap where they're like super leaning into that aesthetic, and it's just really funny, especially looking at it now, because as a kid I like didn't really get some of it, like whatever references or jokes where it's, you know, they're all wearing like MC Hammer pants or whatever, and just super like fun all around. Which on the similar note, still on songs, I forget what the name of it was, but there's an episode where it's Doofenshmirtz's daughter is at,
Yes.
what was it, a midday junkyard punk rave,
Oh yeah.
and he drops her off, and at some point they're all like, you know, at the rave or whatever, and then he's fighting Perry, and he has a mind control device, and the mind control device he's not been using to like mind control a president or something. He's just using it to mind control Perry to have him do like menial tasks for him. So like he'll be talking on the phone and he'll just be like, "Hey Perry, do you want to hold that? I don't want to hold my arm up." Like just it's just that.
Yeah,
So every once in a while
where
it'll cut back to that bit.
I remember one where he like makes Perry pick up like a piece of gum from the floor or something, and he's like, "Oh, are you gonna eat it? What are you doing?" And like right before he eats it, I think he like pulls it away, like, "Oh, that's disgusting. Don't do that."
Yeah. It's like, "Oh, I can't believe you actually did it. That's gross."
Yeah, that song's called "There's a Platypus Controlling Me." It's a really good one. I
Yes.
love it.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what it is.
yes. Oh,
Yeah,
my
because
gosh.
it's at some point then Perry puts the mind control helmet on Doofenshmirtz, and then in the fight he like falls down this pile of garbage because they're in a like junkyard, and he gets glue on his hands, and then he falls on the turntable and then stops the music because he's got his hands glued to the turntable, and then Perry controls him and then starts making Doofenshmirtz sing the song, which is just Doofenshmirtz explaining the situation that's happening. Which is that a platypus is literally controlling him, but then all of the punk teenage kids start thinking that it's a metaphor, and then one of them in the audience is like, "Yeah, the school system is a platypus. My parents are a platypus." And they're like, "A platypus is just a metaphor for whatever's controlling you in your life." And then they turn it into a punk anthem where they're all like trying to rebel against the system.
It's so good.
That episode you were talking about earlier, the one where Perry and Doofenshmirtz like break up because he's fighting someone else. That has like two really good songs. I think one of them's called "When We Didn't Get Along," and the other's called "My Nemesis." They're like, I love them so much. They're some of my
Oh,
favorites.
yes.
My Nemesis, I remember
Yeah.
specifically. Definitely a good amount. I wanted to bring up a little something. I feel like again where like the show thrives is in its like interaction between its characters. But a little fun fact is that the actors don't actually record together whenever they're making the show, and Phineas and Ferb specifically, their characters have only met like a handful of times in real life,
Damn.
which is
It's really
pretty
interesting.
weird to me because I feel like it's so.
It's
It
impressive,
just
yeah.
feels.
Yeah.
It is really impressive.
It
'cause
feels like a really intimate show where it's like
exactly.
you kind of assume that everyone working on this is like friends, but maybe that's just the like whole vibe of the show.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I remember seeing like a production thing that Dan posted on his Twitter, and it was like, here's a picture of Ashley Tisdale saying Candace's lines, and it was just her sitting alone in a room, like sitting on a chair, just with a headset on, recording her lines.
It's so weird to me. I didn't
Yeah.
put together that Ashley Tisdale was Candace for some reason.
Yeah,
for
my
the longest
sister, like
time.
after years of watching it, my sister was like, that sounds like the girl from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and it like put two and two together, and I was, oh my god, it is.
Yes, and Brenda Song's in it too. She's Isabella, right? I think.
I think.
Is
I
she
think so.
really?
I think so. Let me check, because I might be completely lying straight to your guys' faces right now,
Thank you.
because that's also my thing. I just love lying. Uh, stalling? What are you talking about, stalling?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I
what are
can't
some
find
other
it.
side characters that because there's a lot of really good. Let's start with the main cast. Are there any like side characters of the main like group of kids that stand out, or at least bits that they have?
I liked Buford a lot.
Yeah.
Buford's pretty great.
Yeah, I like the
That's-
episode where he loses fish and
Oh, I saw
I had to fight a squid.
Isabella. he keeps saying throughout the episode that he's not crying about it. He's just sweating through his eyes, and then Isabella comes up to him and is like, "Are you sweating through your eyes?" And he's like, "No, I'm just crying."
Yeah, that was one of the like really good callbacks in that Lemonade episode because Buford's like the bartender, and it's just Candace, because like her and her best friend in that episode have a fight, and it's Candace like being sad at the bar, but it's a lemonade bar because it's a kids show, and Buford's like the bartender with the rag over his shoulder, and he's telling her stories, and he's like, I lost a best friend once. He was a little guy, called him Biff. We had to fight a squid. Just like really random line that's thrown out there, and I just lost my mind when I heard that again.
I was very wrong about Brenda Song. She doesn't play Isabella. I know, Brenda, you're listening right now. I am very sorry.
There was
Also
one
called
called
the podcast.
Alison Stoner, I think.
Yeah, it sure was. Brenda Stone apparently played Wendy. I don't even remember. Oh, apparently
that
it was
Doofenshmirtz?
Candace's
Is that-
nemesis.
Oh,
Okay.
I can't picture that character. I'm sure if I saw them, I'd recognize it.
Yeah, I gotta look this up. I'm interested. That is.
Yeah. But Alison Stoner. Now I'm getting brought back. I get it now.
Yeah.
I know,
I
like
think
as a
Buford-
series. Oh, sorry.
I think Buford's a really good example of them again, kind of shifting that, like stereotype that they kind of set up. Like in the first couple episodes, he is shown as like the bully character, and then eventually he just kind of settles in with them, and
Yeah.
they just get used to him being around. And there's a lot of really good jokes that they play with that.
Yeah.
Like in the one when they're superheroes, there's a point where they hear someone screaming, and it's Buford screaming, and he's like, "My nerd's stuck in a tree," and then it's Baljeet like sitting up in the tree, and to
Yeah.
try and get him down, he's like, "Look, I got some calculus problems in your favorite calculator," and he's like, "Ooh, fractions," and he like tries to climb down.
Yeah, the relationship between Buford and Baljeet is like really good. They have a song, and like I think this like way later on, whenever I stopped watching the series, but I found it recently.
Mhm.
I think it's called "Frenemies" is the song, and I love it. It's really
That
good.
sounds right, yeah.
Frenemies was a classic. I'm gonna go ahead and attest to that one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think now, because there's so many good little interactions with all of these side characters. I think Isabella and all of the, is it Fireside?
The Fireside Girls.
Fireside Girls, yeah. That's a like always very fun and wholesome. Like I don't think there's any characters in this show that if they show up I'm like, "Oh, it's this one."
Yeah.
Like they're all fun to watch and
Yeah. I also want to bring up how genuinely wholesome Phineas is. I think that's so
Yeah.
funny to me. And like how he's portrayed against, like, it feels like it's Candace against Phineas, but it's really not. It's just kind of Candace against, like, herself almost, you know?
Oh,
He's
Because-
really
yeah.
oblivious to the fact that she's trying to like destroy him.
Exactly. I think Phineas is just such a super oblivious character too, and it's so funny to me.
Yeah.
I think it's funny because actually, not to just keep coming back to these fun facts, but for the original pitch of Phineas and Ferb, Phineas was apparently supposed to be aware of Isabella's crush on him, and he was supposed to think it's really annoying whenever she shows up. So I'm glad that they made that change because I actually really like Isabella's character.
Yeah.
I think it definitely adds to the show, but it's interesting because I think that really changes him as that changes him as a character. Like,
Yeah,
from
for
a-
sure.
From a foundational point.
Because it's very much like he just wants to support his friends and have a good time. And I don't
Exactly.
think they ever have a point, like, there's never, like, the annoying cousin or something like a lot of cartoons do where they'll have, you know, the family comes to visit and, like, isn't, like, SpongeBob has his, like, I don't remember his name, but the cousin where he's super, like, tall and lanky
Oh
and
yeah.
just messes things up. Or,
Bad
like,
at everything. Yeah.
yeah. Or, like, Foster's had, what was his name? The yellow guy that no one likes.
Bendy.
Like, there's Bendy, thank you. Yeah, there's never a Bendy episode of Phineas and Ferb, as far as I could remember, where a character shows up and the whole point of the character is just that they suck and they're annoying. Like, there's villains, but even then the villains are, like, relatively
So
fun to
likable.
watch most of the time.
Yeah, there's that episode where, like, another group of kids come in and it's just like, basically just Phineas and Ferb, and they're like, "Oh, we can build stuff better than you," and then that's like a whole contest of building a fort. That's a really fun
Yeah.
episode.
Oh, that's true. That's true. But that was such a
Mhm.
good episode. I think that was
Yeah.
a well orchestrated one.
Oh, I love that episode. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all very. Everything is very good intentioned, and it's just so.
It's
It
never
makes it so
mean-spirited.
fun to watch. Yeah.
It is never mean spirited. That's a perfect way to explain it.
Mm. Yeah, and like even some of the characters that are like leaning more to the asshole side are like really funny. Like the mayor, like is it Roger Doofenshmirtz is the mayor?
Oh yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
Honestly, I
that's his brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, his brother is so funny. Like he's not used a lot, but it's always so good and he's just such an asshole. And they have the I love Doofenshmirtz's backstory with the
Yeah. I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah, and it's because they have, I think it's just the second episode where he's going to steal lawn gnomes from everyone so that everyone's gardens are open to be weakened to witchcraft or whatever, which is so not a thing that's been like discussed in the last 40 years, but whatever. And it's because as a child, their lawn gnome was broken, and then his father was like, well, someone has to protect our garden. And they decided that it would be Doofenshmirtz.
That was such a good like scene because he was like, my only friend was the moon, and then he was like, and then he like a tear fell down his eye, and then his dad screamed at him for moving. It's just so perfect.
Oh,
I love
man.
it so much. Oh my god.
There's also the backstory where he says he goes off about how none of his parents showed up to his birth.
Yeah. This is him alone in the operating room.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, dude. That's another really good bit, is anything with his backstory is so
It's because
funny.
it changes every
And-
time.
Yeah, it's so inconsistent.
There's another one where he's
Like
like,
the-
I was raised by ocelots in the wilderness.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do
I
like
like
the
how
one.
it-
Oh, sorry.
I just want to say I wanted to imagine like that Americans or just non-Germans watching it just kind of thought that's how Germany was. Like there's got to be some people out there that got like some of their knowledge on Germany based on Doofenshmirtz's like plots. It's so funny.
I like how they brought the gnome thing back though in a later episode, because there was the whole thing of There's like a whole bunch of episodes that like was about him and his balloon like friend. I think we just called
Yeah.
Balloony. And then
Yeah.
the whole reason he
The
lost
really realistic human face drawn on it.
the only reason he lost it was because he like was holding it whenever he was a gnome outside, and he he let go of it for a second, and his dad wouldn't. Shouted at him the second he reached out to grab it, so he had to watch it fly away into space. It was really sad. And he comes back and the balloon's like covered in armor, like space armor.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
within the whole, because they had, was it 3 or 4 episodes for the whole Meep saga where it's just the alien that.
Oh yeah, I think they made the one episode and then it ended with like a fake episode that they were never intended on making, but then eventually they just gave in and made it, and they had to like keep up with every
Yes.
promise they made at the end of that episode that they never had any idea, and they had like try their best to string a story around all of those scenes.
Yeah, because the like stinger at the end on that first one is like with the early 2000s movie guy doing the like next time it won't be okay voice, and it ends with them saying be ready for Meepless in Seattle, and then it's like Meep standing on top of the Space Needle, and then he just goes Meep, and then it like zooms out and like the big title like crashes in or something like an action movie. And
Yeah.
I was wondering, did you guys play the video games at all? Were you guys? Because I didn't, but I was curious.
I owned it on DS. I think I got it for my birthday once, and I hated it the first time I played it because I just couldn't beat. I think it only has 4 levels, and it's just you going around this really linear place. Like you can barely do anything, just like collecting parts, and you had to build like 4 different inventions from episodes of the show, and I didn't understand how it worked at all, so I gave up and never played it for years. But then I think I came back to it a couple of years later, and I beat it, and I had a lot of fun. But then like the next year I came back and I was like, I want to play it again, so I deleted my save file and started a new one, and I couldn't beat the first level again. I don't understand how that game works. I need to go back and play it.
It's wild. The creators Dan and Jeff actually like didn't oversee those games at all, so I was curious on like the level of like how good they really are. But if you enjoyed it, like that's totally cool.
Yeah, if you understand how
idea.
it worked, I'm sure it's a fun game.
Apparently, like they got interviewed and were questioned about it. They were like, we won't know anything about the game until you guys know stuff about the game, like honestly. So it's kind of funny.
I think the only other game I played was a Flash game. I don't even know if it was a Flash game. It was online to promote the movie, and it was a game where you're like playing as different characters running around in a 3D space, like going through portals. And I remember it was
I do
fun.
remember that.
I think you're thinking of Portal.
Yeah, I must have been like downloaded a Phineas and Ferb mod.
You're like, oh yeah. My bad.
Oh, I just remembered another. Sorry to keep backtracking to Doofenshmirtz shit,
No, you
but
go ahead because that's perfect.
one of the other backstories that killed me is he has an episode where his plan is to make a giant floating claw machine claw, and then I think just pick up the town hall. And I don't remember what his plan was after that, but he wanted to pick it up. And his explanation why was because as a child, there was a fair where he grew up in Germany. And it's all of the claw machines in the fair were just filled with rocks. And
But one had a toy in
and then
it.
one of them had a teddy bear in it. And then he's like, I
So good.
saved up my allowance after 4 months, which was a single nickel.
Oh, it's really sad. I remember this now.
And and then he puts the nickel, and he gets the teddy bear, and then he really proudly takes it home and gives it to his mother, who immediately gives it to his brother Roger, who then takes out a marker and writes Roger on the bear, claiming it is his, which he proceeded to do with their mother, effectively banishing me from the family. And in the clip, it's just like it's just basically a shorter version of Roger. Like, child Doofenshmirtz like kind of looks like a kid. Like, you can tell that it's a different design. Adult Roger, or child Roger, is just adult Roger, but shorter.
Yeah.
So it's just a smaller version of the mayor taking out a marker, and then, like, on the mother's, like, apron that she's wearing, just writing Roger in all capital letters. And then he just, like, puts his hands on his hips and looks at Doofenshmirtz until he leaves. And then...
It's so perfect.
He's like the perfect villain because you like completely understand why he's a bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was curious to Mark, like, do you consider this like your favorite cartoon show, or like what made you? Whenever we reached out, what made you decide to like put this as what you wanted to talk about?
Honestly, I was kind of like stuck for what I wanted to talk about because like I could pick any cartoon show out there, and the two biggest shows I remember watching as a kid was SpongeBob and Phineas and Ferb, which is why those are the two I told you. But I'm actually glad I talked about Phineas and Ferb because it's like reminding me of so much stuff because I haven't watched the show in years, and it's reminding me of so much stuff that I just forgot about it, and it's just so weird to know that like just like hearing this stuff makes me remember everything from these episodes and how much I actually do like subconsciously remember about this show. It's like I love it.
That's 100% my journey too. I feel like it's been just not remembering that you remembered so much about this show.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I watched it a little bit growing up, and then now I watched a bunch of episodes, and I was like, every single one of these episodes I remember like almost to the point where like you can quote parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was obsessed with this show, I guess, or maybe it was just on enough. But yeah, I am glad that. I mean, SpongeBob would have been an awesome idea too, and again, I'm sure we're gonna end up talking about SpongeBob at some point in time. But I think where this show like has been shining for me is going back to shows that I wouldn't necessarily go back to, and I think Phineas and Ferb was like a delight for me because of that.
Yeah, I'm really regretting not watching the show before doing this because I desperately just want to go now and like watch the entire show again.
Which
sorry.
I'm definitely at there too, where like I even have been watching through this, but I kind of think after we're done recording this, I might just like go watch some more Phineas and Ferb because it's just really fun to watch, and like I've been in a good mood for the last like week, and that might have something to do with it. Is just that like the content that I'm consuming is just really wholesome. Like, yeah, we're just gonna go have some fun today and go build some shit instead of like I don't know, whatever else I was watching.
Yeah,
before.
I don't
like,
know.
It just
like,
puts you in such a good mood all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%. Especially like, I think a lot of shows do a lot of good jobs at captivating, like giving you, like Super Jail for instance, really kind of made you feel on edge and super, like, not at ease.
Mhm.
Whereas Phineas and Ferb feels like, I mean, I'm glad we had a weak barrier between Super Jill and Phineas and Ferb.
Yeah.
Because it does feel so much. It feels.
It captures being a kid so well.
It does, yeah.
Like
100%.
it gets that like just childlike wonder out of everything that it does, while also still having like a grounded like aspect that it doesn't just kind of feel like you're watching something without any like direction that it's going. Like it's very well thought out while still being able to capture all these like really raw and fun emotions.
Definitely.
I agree, 100%.
I think. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna. This is like a different topic entirely, so I don't know what you were about
Perfect,
to say.
because that's what I was gonna do.
Yeah.
So you're fine.
I wanted to mention. I remember once back, whenever the show was around season 2 or 3, I think they had promotion over. It might have just been in the UK where it was they had 3 like hour-long specials lined up. They mightn't have been an hour, all of them up in an hour, but I know at least one was where there was like 3 specials of like really long episodes that had. I think one of them was
That sounds right.
one of them was the Summer Belongs to You episode, which
Yeah.
is like an hour long. Another one, I think another one was Roller Coaster the musical. And
Yeah,
I'm
because
trying
they
to remember what
redid
the
the
next one
first.
is.
Yeah.
yeah, these things were like events whenever I was a kid. I'm remembering how excited I got for these. Summer Belongs to You. I did actually watch that episode like a month ago, and I loved it so much. All the music is so good. That's
Really good.
and Roller Coaster the musical. That has like some of my favorite songs from the show in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was for anyone who doesn't know. It's because every episode of the show has usually like 2 songs in it, 1 or 2. But the pilot, like the first episode ever, the roller coaster one, I don't think has any,
No,
does
it
it? Right?
doesn't,
Because
no.
that's why. Yeah, so they didn't have any music in it, and they were like, well, we kind of want to have every episode have its songs to it and like have a song based on each thing they built. So they just had them go back and redo the roller coaster, but they turned it into like a half-hour long musical episode instead of like the 12 minutes that it originally was.
Yeah. And I
So
remember
it's the same thing, but they go and add all these like huge musical numbers. And I feel like they make a couple jokes about it where they like go to start one and it's just like the same line that they would have had recorded, but they just sing the line instead,
yeah, I
just to like
think
one note of music and
the first song in the musical is Phineas just explaining that we're just gonna do the exact same thing again, but this time we're gonna do it in song. Like that's some of
Yeah.
like those are some of like the lyrics that are actually in that song. It's like we're just
That's
gonna
so
do
good.
it again, but this time in song.
That's so
And
perfect.
Ferb says something like it's like one of his only lines for the episode, and he's like, "But how are we gonna how are people gonna like know to sing to start randomly breaking out in song with us?" And Phineas just like, I guess we'll just assume it. And then Candace comes in like a couple minutes and sings a song, and Phineas is like, "See."
That's so good. I think the first episode being building a roller coaster felt so perfect for like to set off what Phineas and Ferb ended up being, because like as a kid, at least for me, I was like, how cool would that be just having a roller coaster in your backyard? And I feel like it captured the perfect like vibe of wanting to be like inside a kid's imagination and really actually orchestrating all the things that a kid might dream about doing. I really enjoyed that. I think that's like one of the like as a kid, for instance, watching that, I was just like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
fuck, why can't I do that? Why can't that be me?
Yeah.
Yeah, other than the roller coaster you just mentioned, were there any of Phineas and Ferb's inventions or creations that you remember just being like really sitting down and thinking about as a kid and being like, man, how cool would it be if, or even now, because it's valid to think now that they're pretty cool too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Does if anybody else wants to go first while I think
Uh,
about
I've got a couple. I really liked the one where it was like just a giant, like massive bouncy castle, but it was like just
Oh
like
yeah,
20 times the size of our house, and it was like really intricate and shit like that.
yeah. There's a bunch of different rooms and stuff, and
And
Yeah.
there was like the golf one where it was like a massive mini golf course.
yeah.
And I'm trying to think. I'll think of more. Someone else can go.
how about
I
how about just having a talk show? Like that's so funny to me, and I'm like, how perfect is that? I feel like it's such a perfect, like it doesn't make sense, but it makes so much sense. It fits so perfectly to me.
Yeah, I like how some of them it's not as much a huge investment as much as a random business deal they decided to strike up.
Like the brick.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
How
where they
about the treehouse?
oh, the
Oh,
treehouse was
yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool one.
Yeah.
I remember that one pretty vividly. Like you just
Mhm.
wasn't there like an elevator that you take up to get to the top of it or something like that? And that was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
And then they turn into
Especially
like
growing
mechs.
up, I never had a treehouse, but always wanted to build one, but like didn't have a tree. So
Yeah, same.
it's just kind of like, well, I guess you might need that. But I remember being super.
I think that
jealous.
episode did make me want to build a treehouse, but like all the trees around me are really like skinny and short and would like snap immediately if like I tried to build
Yeah.
something on it. So I think what I did was I pulled like 4 chairs from my inside my house, sat them in the garden, and like put a blanket over them. I was like, this can be my treehouse.
Oh my gosh,
That's awesome.
fantastic. That's so good. If you don't mind, how old were you whenever? I guess let's see. When did it premiere?
When-
2008.
2008.
Early 2008.
I was 6 at that time, and I did watch it from
Oh,
the
okay.
start.
You
I
did
think
watch it from the start, you said, or didn't?
pretty sure I watched it from the start.
Yeah.
uh,
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely watched it from the start.
Okay. So wow, so you're 6 years old. Let's see, how old was I? I guess I was 10.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So, or 9, I guess. I was 9. So
Because it was like February, right?
yeah.
Oh wait, February?
that's pretty-
I was 5. then.
February.
Yeah, I was in February.
I was 5.
Yeah, I
I
would have been
think it-
7 when it premiered, so I think we were all kind of like in the age range where it's still gonna
Yeah.
spark that
100%.
creative whatever that it's trying
Yeah.
to hit.
Yeah.
It definitely did impact like my creativity growing up. I remember me and my friends built not like a treehouse type thing, but we built like a fort in our backyard, and it was my friend across the street. We would have like walkie-talkies and wait until the middle of the night, and then call each other and be like, "Hey, like let's go to the fort," and we'd be like, "Oh, it's just like we're in the show." You know what I mean?
That's so cool. Yeah, I
It was
love
just
that.
like it's like so silly, but it's so perfect. I think that perfectly encapsulates exactly like it's literally just the show in an elevator pitch is literally just a kid's imagination if they actually had the resources to make what they're imagining,
Yeah, for sure.
but they never explain how they get like the resources, like in the roller coaster episode.
But I love
Wait.
that it's always the like they have all of the legal papers and whatnot in
Yeah.
order, so that like if anyone were to ever be like, "Oh, why do you make this?" They were like, "Well, we had the building permit, like we were allowed."
Yeah.
Like,
They're like, aren't you a little young to be a roller coaster engineer?
Yes,
Just
yes,
like,
I am. And then they just continue building. I remember there was one where they were like building Candace's face, and what are those things? I don't live in
Mount
America.
Rushmore.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
and then some guy who like is security there comes up and is like, "Aren't you a little young to be like making like." I forget exactly what he said, but like sculpting like a face into this, and then he's like, "Yes, yes, I am." He just walks away, not acknowledging the vandalism.
I think what was it? The episode where, not to keep just going back to the same episode, but when he was making the one hit wonder, like part of their plan was to also like be a diva and get mad
Yeah.
and like, storm out of the room.
Yeah,
So the
they're
guy's like-
offered a multiple record deal.
Yeah. They're like, "You're about to make a lot of money." He's like, "Money? You think that's what this is all about?" But anyway, there's a part where they're like, "Aren't you a little young to make a one-hit wonder?" He's like, "No." And it's just like, you're like watching it, and it feels so wrong that he said no just then, because you're like, wait, yes you are. You're supposed to say yes.
And you're like, "You're 11."
That's the part of the episode where you say yes, though.
Yeah, they do a lot of like nice like little subversions on their own tropes. I remember there's one because the whole like thing is that Perry will like to get to his like base. There's like a bunch of different like tunnels throughout the house that he takes, and they can be like anywhere. And then I remember one where he like walks up and like opens a trash can and jumps into it, and after a couple of seconds he just has to jump back out covered in garbage and
Yeah.
jumps into the trash can beside it, and then that takes him there.
Yeah,
That's
I
so good.
love all of the little weird versions from the norm that they have with that. I'm just looking through a bunch of like a full list of a bunch of the innators and the inventions, and there are so many good ones. Like I as a kid loved the haunted house episode because I was
Oh,
like, this
yeah.
looks crazy, and I always loved the Halloween episodes. And it's that thing where as a kid I'm like, this would probably horrify me in real life, but also like I kind of really want to try it. Like this like looks crazy.
100%.
Or there was they filled their pool with jello.
Oh yeah, that's a good episode. I like that. It was like Isabella's birthday or something. So
Yeah. So they filled her pool with jello, and then Doofenshmirtz has an innator that makes things evil, and it accidentally hits the jello, so
yes.
it turns it into a giant jello monster, and then I think Buford tries to eat through it, and they're like, "We can't eat all that jello," so then they just get a bunch of like hoses and water guns and fight off the giant monster with water guns, which is also like a really good, I think, like kid thing where they were like, what if there's a giant monster and we could actually defeat it with all of our super soakers? Like, just such good little letting the imagination run wild of a kid.
yeah.
Oh, what one last creation
Mhm.
before was the water slide in the UK. I think it was like I remember the water slide going around like Big Ben and stuff like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah, I remember that.
You're in the UK, right, Mark?
Not in
What
London.
was-
I'm
Not
in
in London?
I'm in Ireland, but I'm in the north, and that's like considered part of the UK.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you? So I am definitely pretty dumb in that aspect. So I won't ask any questions. I mean, I have a general grasp on that, but like, I guess this is a more general question. But like, whenever cartoons, because generally speaking, like cartoons like Phineas and Ferb, for instance, takes place in America. Are there any like parts of the show where you're like, this is like for instance, you didn't know what the Mount Rushmore is called, which is fine. You're not American, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, that's like more of a just a thing that everybody knows here. Are there any like, how often does that come up?
Basically all the time in shows, but whenever you're a kid, like since every piece of media that we like consume here is like from America, like most of the
Yeah.
popular cartoons that we like see, whenever I actually like see something from America, and I'm going to America in like a couple of months, so I'm gonna be like really confused, like, oh wait, these things are real. Like I think anytime I've heard, because every show I watch over here is like has American voice actors, so anytime I hear an American speak in real life, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, you exist.
You're a
You're not
living
just-
cartoon.
You're not just a
You're
piece
from a
of
cartoon.
You're not just a piece of fiction. Yeah.
That's a good way to consider human
That's really
beings.
good.
I love it. Oh, that's so good. So, do you guys have to move on a little bit? Do you guys have like, do you recommend the entire show, or maybe specific seasons or episodes in particular to start out with?
I know I haven't watched all the episodes in season. I think I stopped watching it around season 3, so I can't say
Okay.
much for season 4, even though I've seen a couple episodes. But I know I would just recommend, like, because it is the same like concepts throughout. Like I'd just recommend starting from the episode 1 and working your way through.
Yeah.
Or you don't even have to watch every single episode. Like you can just watch
Hmm.
like one here and there, see if you like it. Because I can imagine this would not be a good show to binge, because it is really formulaic.
It is super formulaic. Yeah.
I'm just like looking through. I've had that list up that as we've been talking, I've been looking through a bunch of the innators and stuff just to kind of give me an idea of like what episodes are where. Because anytime I watched it, for the most part, it was whatever episode was on, so I didn't associate. Oh, this is a season 1 episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it-
100%.
It stays pretty strong all the way through. Like going through each of these seasons, there's definitely multiple points in all of them where I'm like, oh, I remember that episode. Like this is a good one. And there wasn't any point where I was like, oh, I would definitely recommend skipping that. Like they're all
Yeah.
fun.
I
Also,
think. Oh, go ahead.
I'd like to give a shout out to the wood innator, which is a giant machine with a big comical magnet on the front of it that takes away wood from a beaver dam to raise the sea level so that Doofenshmirtz can have beachfront property to raise his property value.
So ridiculous.
That's perfect.
I love
One
the
thing I
mundane
would say-
plans.
Yeah, 100%. One thing I would say about watching, like, in what order you want to watch, I'd say definitely get, like, watch a considerable amount before you watch the movie.
Hmm.
Because, I mean, the movie probably would be fine completely alone, but I think, like, with the combination of having all of the episodes, like, in your mind before it kind of, like, I think it works to its advantage a lot more.
The ending would like make no sense at all, and it would have like no impact. Because the ending, can I
yeah.
spoil this, or should I not spoil it?
I don't know.
You can talk about it.
Yeah, sure. I don't
The
really.
end of it is, so the whole theme throughout the movie is that, like it said at the start, is that every time Perry has defeated one of, his innators, they all, what's it called again? Their organization.
AUCA, organization without a cool acronym.
They like scan and make a 3D copy of all their inventions, including Phineas and Ferb's. So, Phineas and Ferb keeps thinking that like Perry has like ignored them and like not been with them and missed all the cool inventions they made all summer. But by the end of it, whenever Perry's been like kidnapped, they go down to his like entrance and find all that he's like got 3D copies of every single thing they've invented throughout the show, and so the ending is just like a big battle using every single thing that all the inventions throughout the series, and it's really
Yeah.
cool. Like that blew my fucking mind when I saw it.
Yeah, where they like, don't they like put Baljeet in like the beak suit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'd say definitely watch a considerable amount of the show before you watch the movie. But definitely watch, like, make your way to the movie. It's
Yeah, I
worth
think the
it.
movie is good. It's probably just in general gonna like you'll pick up on any of the inside jokes and stuff where they start to mess with the formula, but it wouldn't hurt to start from the beginning and just watch through it if you don't really care. And like if you get like 2 minutes into an episode and you don't really like the plot, you're probably not gonna miss
You're
too
not
much.
missing
if you
any lore building.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not like they have any big lore building anything, but there's
Yeah.
definitely points in later episodes where it does benefit from you knowing the habits of the characters at least, which you can just kind of get from watching a bunch of it. But
Yeah.
like they don't get as comfortable making those jokes super early on.
Yeah. There's
So
also a
if you
lot
were
of running gags. Like I know
Yeah,
there's the gag
exactly.
of like that woman and her husband, and the woman's like, "Why did you buy this thing? What did you think? Something else is just gonna fall out of the sky?" And then it just
Yeah.
Oh
that thing
yes.
falls
Oh
out
my
of the
gosh.
sky, and they
It's
play
that
with
type of
that. Like
stuff
that
you
just
don't even
happens
think
throughout the whole
about.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or even the like little jingle whenever they cut to Doofenshmirtz, where
I
it's like
love.
you get used to it being Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated, and then one time it'll be like Doofenshmirtz ex-wife's white sedan or something like.
There's one where he's like standing in the middle of the ocean holding a bucket, and the jingle just goes Doofenshmirtz holding a bucket.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so good.
And those are good on their own, but it's like way better if you've heard the formula so much that you're expecting something and then it just starts to cut. Like it gets you that jolt of whatever the different thing is. Or
Yeah.
I don't remember the specific episode, but like there was one point when they all walk into the backyard and someone other than Isabella says, "What you doing?" And she just like freezes for a second and she's like, "What am I even around here for anyway?" Like just gets really upset for no reason. That if you didn't like get the context and have seen that happen like 20 times already, it might just be something where you like don't really think about it, but it adds a lot of like fun little character moments and stuff if you have kind of started earlier on. So I would recommend going chronologically, but you're not going to be
Yeah. They also
missing
bring
much
that
if you
back
don't.
up in the finale, which like ages everyone up like 10
Mhm.
years, and the whole thing is she just slowly realizes like I'm just wasting my time like watching you
Mhm.
build your shit all the time. So they do play with it. I definitely wouldn't like watch the finale like until you watch a considerable amount of the show.
Yeah. Yeah, basically once you've gotten to a point where you've watched enough that you have become pretty attached to the characters is when, because all the like finales and event stuff, it's not as much built on, oh, do you remember this specific thing that happened? Like if you watch the finale or like the movie and you don't remember every single invention that they have there, it's not really going to matter too much where you're like, oh, I need to know exactly what like all of the superpowers that the beak suit has, as much as it's you care about the characters that are put in that situation. So once you've kind of gotten to a point where you're like, I really like everyone that I'm watching, then you're probably familiar enough with it to be able to go into the movies and stuff.
100%. Yeah, I agree. That's perfect. Perfect explanation.
Was there any other stuff we specifically wanted to talk about, even if it's random offshoots of stuff that we thought of earlier? Because I got one. It's probably not going to be long because he's not in it much, but it's a really
You go
good
for
bit.
it.
Norm, Doofenshmirtz's robot
Yeah, I forgot
companion.
about him.
So funny every time. I
Oh
watched
wow, yeah.
during the rewatch. There was an episode where it's just it's just him being like, I want to be a real boy. Please love me, father. Like it's just super weird and kind of sad. But like it shows his daily routine of like he gets up and then he does the big over exaggerated like stretching your arms out, waking up and he punches a hole in the wall and then you see him like slide his bed back a couple feet and then hang a picture of Doofenshmirtz up over the hole and then the camera like zooms out a little bit and you see like 18 more of these pictures lined up across the room and like when he goes to change he just gets a bucket of paint and like paints his suit on instead of painting like pajamas on him. It's all just a bunch of like really weird funny little robot jokes.
That's so good.
And then and is he not the one? Yeah, he's powered by a squirrel running on a wheel inside of his chest. Like
It's just
he's
so
a character
perfect.
not used very much, but every time he comes up, it's so funny, and it's Doofenshmirtz just like being the horrible, neglectful father to him all the time. It's just one of the few like mean-spirited bits that doesn't even get taken that mean-spirited because everyone just kind of sees it and then moves on and like take relatively positive reactions out of it. But
Yeah.
it got me every time he showed up.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I don't really have. I guess I've kind of spoken my piece. I wanted to make sure you guys got across the idea that I do enjoy the Phineas and Ferb interviews, especially with Jablinski Games. That was a good one. Can't believe they found him as such a young talent years before his YouTube
Before his
fame.
claim to fame.
But that's pretty much it.
Oh no, dude! Important thing we haven't talked about yet: the live show.
Oh wow! I can't believe we
Oh
almost
man,
went
so we.
without that. Mark, please tell me.
I haven't watched the live show, but I've seen those very pleasant images from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we
Yeah.
haven't either.
Yeah, that's all we want to say is it's not as much that we have opinions on the live show because we haven't seen it. We might watch it eventually just to like, I don't know, see what it's about. But at some point, Phineas and Ferb was so popular that they had a on-stage show where it's like people in Phineas and Ferb costumes, but it's like not full costumes. It's just kind of like a head for some characters, but for some characters, it's just like their forehead and these horrifying bug eyes that they have.
Ugh.
And
And
it's,
then some of the characters, it's full body. Like, they don't have any continuity whatsoever. It's
Yeah.
so scary.
and it, all of the images for it look terrifying, but it's hilarious. And it was right before this episode, like Carl and I were writing down the notes for the show and whatnot. And at some point, I was like browsing the wiki just to see if there was any like weird Phineas and Ferb thing we could talk about. And I was like, oh, they did a live show. I'm gonna look up the costumes because I want to see what the production design looks like. And it's terrifying. And I indulge anyone who is listening to this right now to pull up Google, unless you're in your car, then pull it to the side and then pull up Google. And
Veer to the side right this instant.
and
Go
Google
to
Phineas and Ferb
google.com.
live show and just look through the images because it's incredible. I can't believe this exists and got made and got through. Like, so many people must have had to approve and then make these. And I cannot imagine being a child sitting in that theater and not being mortified that they're going to eat you while you sleep because it's
Yeah.
so scary looking.
100%. Specifically Isabella, I want to give a warm shout out to being the scariest thing I've seen in my entire life. Honestly, Candace is up there too, but
Yeah.
I think Isabella really does take the cake on that one.
Like, the Doofenshmirtz one doesn't look bad. The Phineas and Ferb ones are okay, apart from they, like, have... Phineas needs more of a neck. It's just... It looks like he's constantly shrugging. But
No, I see that.
so many of them are just so scary looking, and we'll, like, find links... We'll find a way to incorporate this somewhere into, like, our Twitter and such. Maybe just by, like, randomly at 3 a.m., like, tweeting out images of it, which might be the best way to do it. But, man, they're horrifying, and it's so funny.
My favorite is
I
the
just
picture
appreciate
of
bringing light to things that should probably have never seen the light of day.
my favorite is the picture of Ferb like with dead eyes hugging a child, and the child is looking over at the side of Phineas, and Phineas is just staring this kid in the
Yeah.
eyes with a wide open smile.
They're all
And
so
you
bad.
can-
I love it.
And like, 'cause it's not a full suit, you can see like the man's like hairy arms and legs, just like,
Yeah,
with
like
Phineas's
really
head.
human legs. Oh man,
It's terrible.
is that the note we're leaving on?
Yeah, sure. Everybody just skip the show and the interviews and just watch the Phineas and Ferb live show is, I guess, what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
If you get anything out of this.
At very least, you should watch the rest of it. But if you're only going to consume one piece of Phineas and Ferb content, I would say go with the live show.
Yeah, don't watch the
Yeah.
live show.
Oh man.
You want to
It's been
us
fun.
out of here?
Yeah, it's been fun. We were Cartoon Overload. This was a great week. We went over. We do recommend the show, in case you didn't catch that earlier. We kind of jumped ahead. We usually recommend at the very end, but then we got distracted. Sorry about that for continuity. Mark, where can people find you?
They can find me at youtube.com/. It's not LSMark. It's my old cringy name that I'm not saying aloud.
We'll link it.
Yeah. I'll send you
Twitter?
a link that doesn't. I'll send you a link that doesn't have that name in it.
Yeah.
Or just look up LSMark on
Yeah,
YouTube. It's
you can
just the
do
two
that
letters
too.
LSMark. Guys,
Yeah.
it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Really
Shout
good
out
videos.
to he does a lot of good videos in my opinion. He does a lot of he like he's saying he's kind of it seems like a transition into more like animation based commentary. He
Yeah.
also does a lot of really
I'm-
good like criticism videos.
I'm currently working on a video about Brian Griffin, so if that interests you, then
Okay.
I heard that guy died once.
oh, you're gonna like this new video then.
Carl, did you not hear? Our dog Brian Griffin is dead.
That's
Oh,
right,
no.
Johnny. Our dog, Brian Griffin, is dead. Never to return.
Oh man.
But
What a
honestly,
show.
go check out his
Yeah.
YouTube channel, LSMark. It's really fantastic. It's great stuff.
Thanks.
And if you want to hear more of our nonsense, our Twitter is @TuneOverload, our Instagram is @TuneOverloadShow. You can email us with ideas for episodes, guests. I don't know, maybe email us some really good images of the Phineas and Ferb live show. Tweet those at us, don't email us. We use the email for work. Like @CartoonOverloadShow@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter @Johnny Hayes and on Instagram at the same place, JOHHNYHAZE. Carl, where can people find you?
Karl Jacobs _ It's Karl with a K. All right, guys, none of that C business. Karl Jacobs _ on Twitter and Instagram.
Oh, man.
Did you say your Twitter, Mark? It's just
Oh.
LSMark _
Yeah.
also. He's in that _ gang with me.
Yeah, Turkey Tom, my friend, was like, Mark, why is your Twitter name LSMark956? And he was like, just fucking put an underscore, you retard.
956.
Yeah. It's like a string of random letters.
Oh man.
I love it. That is so
Alrighty, we still don't have a cool intro for the show figured out, so Carl, what are we leaving with today?
Goodbye.
I swear to God.